Do you like squeeze the ball and like honk it?
Let's do this.
I love how you call it the World Series and it's only American teams that play.
Sting was just like a guy in a loincloth the entire movie.
Hi there, welcome to the Reading Queens podcast and our unscripted, unfiltered, and ranty episode. Okay, so I will get ranty. I don't know about the other girls.
We shall
But
see.
We'll see, exactly. I'm Valia, by the way. Hi.
I'm Rose. Hi.
I'm Abby. Hello.
And I'm Clari. Hi.
Yeah, and so we are here today to discuss Dune.
Woohoo!
Yay! All
Yeah!
things Dune.
Yay!
Dun, dun, dun.
Yeah, so as you guys may know, the newest adaptation came out last weekend. So, of course, we have to talk about it because this is what it is. And yeah, we're going to talk about like the original material, other adaptations, all the world stuff, building, blah, blah, blah. Let's just get into it. We are here to talk about it. But first, of course, I want to hear, how are you doing today? Like, how's life? You haven't been on a podcast for a second, so tell me all about it. And the listeners, obviously.
So, how's life? That's such a big question. Life is good. The Houston Astros made it to the World Series.
They did, yeah.
Oh my gosh, y'all, I'm just so excited about that. I love the Astros.
Is that a baseball or hockey?
Girl, you did not just say
Baseball.
that.
Sorry.
Abby.
I'm glad you asked because
Abby.
I don't have a clue either, but then I'm not
Yeah, I was
American,
like, I
so
don't
I've got
think
an
it's
excuse.
soccer.
Okay, but Clary has an excuse,
Yeah.
though. She doesn't live in this country.
Clary definitely has an excuse, Abby.
I'm sorry. All I know are the Cubs because my brother-in-law's obsessed. So that's all I know is Cubs. And that's it.
Yeah, so it's baseball. It's baseball. The Astros are going to the World Series. And that's, of course, my teams. And I love them. And I'm just so excited.
And who are they playing?
They are playing the Atlanta Braves. And here's the thing about the World Series is the Atlanta Braves have not been to the series since, I want to say, 1990.
Wow.
And the Astros, yes. And so they're like the total underdogs. And the Astros have been 3 times in the last 5 years.
Can I just say, I love how you call it the World Series and it's only American teams that play.
I was
That's a
actually,
good point.
yeah. So, yeah, the World Series for the United States. Yeah.
That's hilarious.
Because no one else really plays baseball. Actually, there's a local baseball team here. So,
Wait, really?
yeah. It's called
That's
honkball
super cool.
in Dutch.
Wait. Hulk Bowl?
Honkball.
Honk.
Oh,
Hunk.
I heard Hulk, too.
Yeah.
I was like, what?
Honk ball. Do you like
Honk ball.
squeeze the ball?
No,
and,
it's
like, honk
baseball.
it?
No, that's
it is baseball.
That's the Dutch word for baseball.
Hunk.
Honkball. Yeah.
I
think
like
there's-
that.
I think it's the word for the bases,
Honk.
as in
I
baseball.
run the hunks.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, the first thing that I thought of was that they're all hunky.
Abby and I are over here on superheroes.
I can
That's
neither
what's straight to
confirm nor
hunky.
deny that, Rose, I'm afraid.
Oh my gosh, that's hilarious. It's actually really funny. So when I first came to America, that year was like when I was introduced to all the American sports. And that was also the year that the Diamondbacks went to the World Series and won.
Hey.
And I was like, oh my gosh, this is exciting. And that was the end of my excitement because they haven't done that since.
That's fair.
I was like, oh, okay, cool. I guess this doesn't happen every year. It's not as fun. No, I'm just kidding. I get it. But also, yeah, I mean, I like baseball. I just not a fan like Rose is.
Yeah, we're big fans.
I go for the food, and then I take a really good nap between like number 2, like the session innings 2.
Innings,
Yeah,
yeah.
there we go.
Session.
Innings 2 to like inning 8, and so I get the best sleep, and then I wake up for the end, and then it's pretty good.
There you go. That's where everything
As long as I have a
happens.
system.
Yeah, beginning and the end.
That's true. I do like going to baseball games, like in person, because it's just fun to hang out. Like, depending on people, obviously, you go with, but it's usually fun to hang out and just like eat food and talk in between stuff. But like watching it at home, I'm too restless. I'm like, let me just walk around and do stuff. And then I like miss half the game because I'm doing things.
Yep.
But anyway, that's cool.
Yeah.
Okay, Abby, what are you up to?
Well, I'm still on a high from my birthday the other week. So
Yay.
I really wanted to check something off my bucket list. So I decided to go hot air ballooning. And it was really awesome.
Oh my gosh. Did you post pictures? Have you posted pictures?
I haven't. But I didn't take that many because I was so terrified of dropping my phone over the edge of the basket. Like, I don't know. But I kid you not, like, we were coming down over a neighborhood to land.
Oh my
and
gosh.
there was, like, the balloon was going in between the houses and the streets. Like, I could reach out and touch a roof. That's how close we were.
Oh my goodness.
And, like,
Wait a minute. Was that on purpose or was there a mishap?
I have no idea. The pilot was like, who thought I was going to crash? And everyone's like, oh no, we trusted you. And I raised my hand going, I thought you're going to crash. Like, I thought my life was over. Like,
Wow, that sounds exciting, but I'm would be like too terrified. Like I don't ever want to do that.
I do. It's also on my list too of things that I want to do. Arizona has those like balloon festivals often. Like we'll drive to church and there'll just be air balloons everywhere.
Oh, that's
It's really
awesome.
cool. Yeah, but I've just never gone yet, and I need to. And I am jealous that you got to have like a near-death experience.
I'm so jealous that you almost died.
It was
just sounds
thrilling.
exciting,
It
okay?
was.
That's cool.
That is
Well,
cool.
that's really cool. Yeah, I'm glad you got to do that for your birthday. That's really fun.
Yeah, and then we followed it up by going to this fancy chocolate shop in Boulder, and we bought so many macaroons, so many truffles, and then we ate them all that night.
Of course.
That's how you do it. It's
Yeah,
fun.
it was like, I was planning to save it for the week. Yeah, no, they all went down. It was good.
Yum.
Oh my gosh, I love that. That's fun. All right, Clary, what's going on with your life?
Last week was school holidays, so the kids and I got things. We went to our local geology museum, and they got to cut open geodes and see what was inside.
Fun.
So, like 14 million year old rocks, and they got to be the first ones to look inside and see what was there. So that was fun. And we went to the Dutch Science Museum in Amsterdam, and that's got all sorts of fun things to do. So that was also awesome. That's a great question.
I have a question about the geodes. So they're super old. You don't just throw them against the concrete to smash them open. Like, how do you cut those things open? Because they're rocks.
They had someone there with a saw, so they didn't do
Ah.
that. We bought the geode. They got to choose it, and then we went to the workshop, and there was a guy with a circular saw, and we all had to wear like glasses and headphones, and then he cut it and washed it. Let's not throw my microphone over. So I'm trying to explain it.
Throwing stuff.
And then
That's funny.
and then we got to bring them home. So
That
Were
is
there
so
s-
cool.
Yeah, were there sparkly crystal things inside?
yes, the one my daughter chose was completely filled up with crystal, so
Oh,
there wasn't any
pretty.
gaps at all. And the one my son had a little gap. So yeah,
That's
it was
cool.
cool.
I have a few on my bookshelf back there, actually, because I got myself a kit a couple years ago to do it at home. And so you get like a little packet full of geodes, and then they give you like a little, I don't know, spatula or whatever they're called, and you'd like chisel it down and stuff like that. I remember doing it in the living room. My parents are in there like watching a movie, and I'm over here just like
Chiseling
hitting a rock.
rocks.
Yeah. So I have a few on my shelf. They're so pretty.
Yeah.
That's really cool.
That sounds like a fun thing, like a fun gift also, to give somebody that.
Yeah. I need to give that to my husband. He's got ADHD and is always tinkering. That'd be a great way to
Yeah.
distract him during a movie. It's like, here, chisel a rock.
Yeah, exactly. That's perfect.
Here, have fun.
Yeah, like,
Here's a rock. Have fun with it. No, that's really cool. Okay, so let's talk about
Are you not going to send me
time.
Valia? What have you been doing? Are we just going to ignore you?
Already.
Okay.
No. what have I been doing? I have been working and writing. Like, my life has been very basic recently, so there's just nothing exciting going. I mean, I went on vacation last week, or week ago, 2 weeks ago now, to Michigan to visit a friend, and that was very exciting. We didn't see any colors because Michigan just hates us this time around, which is fine. But we still took a bunch of pictures, which I'll be posting to my Instagram for like the next month. So if you want to see what I did in Michigan, you can check out my Instagram for literally the next month.
And those pictures are beautiful, by the way.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, we had a really blast. I love being outside, like in the forest. And so it was really fun to be like, we're going to go out in the forest. And she's like, okay. But I dragged her around. And it was raining one day, too, when we took pictures, which was also fun for me. And then we also went to a different park to like walk around in the woods and stuff. And yeah, I just love it.
Nice.
You know, you do remind me of a forest creature. Like, if you had any
you.
like house, I imagine you in the forest, in this cottage with green things and ivy crawling up the brick walls and like a little fire. I don't know. Now that you said like you love the forest, it just clicked for me that you would totally be a forest creature.
Except like I wouldn't live there because I like a big city, but I would definitely have one of those and just like escape there every weekend.
It's your vacation house.
Yeah, that's a dream, actually. I would love to have like a lake house in a forest, like a full-on forest. Yeah.
That sounds
anyway,
lovely.
Dreams. Okay.
Dune time.
Now, let's talk about Dune.
Yes.
Dune.
Dune.
Yeah, so first of all, let's just preface this by saying that 3 of us have watched the new movie and one of us has not, which is okay.
That's me. I didn't watch the film. I put my hands up.
No.
I have watched the miniseries though over the weekend from like whenever it was.
Exactly. Everybody knows what Dune is on the podcast. Like, nobody does not, because we all have seen some variation or read the book or something.
Are we doing spoilers or are we not doing spoilers? Are we assuming that everybody knows?
We are doing
all the spoilers.
We're doing spoilers.
Okay.
Yes. That was going to be my next thing. I'm like, you guys, if you don't want to hear spoilers, get out of here now, because I don't even know what a spoiler is. Like, I'm just going to talk. So.
There's no such thing as a spoiler for this movie. If you don't know by now, then too bad.
That's true. Also, this movie was part 1 anyway, so like all the exciting stuff happens in part 2. Anyway, I will get into that later. So I told the ladies before we started, I'm like going to be the unpopular opinion about a lot of things because, first of all, I've only read half the book. I've tried to read this book for many years on multiple occasions. It's just not my cup of tea, but I wanted to be like the cool kids and actually, like have read it. And I enjoyed what I've read. I just haven't finished it. So I like read half of it. And then I've never seen any other adaptation of it except for the new movie that just came out. So that's like where I'm at in my opinions and all that stuff. But the ladies will tell you where they're at and how much they know. But yeah, let's start off with talking about Dune in general. Okay, let's start there since everybody can talk about it.
I read the original books like probably 20 years ago, and I loved them.
Okay.
Me too.
All of the original Frank Herbert books, yes.
Wow.
I might have read one because his son Brian Herbert and Kevin J. Anderson have released quite a number of other books set in the universe.
Right.
Both to finish the series, the original series, and also prequels like hundreds of years and millions of years beforehand. I haven't really read any of those, but I've read
I keep trying to talk over you by accident. Oh, I was just going to say, Kevin J. Anderson also helped write the screenplay. He was like...
He did?
Yeah, for the new adaptation.
Okay.
That I really like Kevin because he was here in Houston at a Comic Palooza. And he was a guest like every year for 5 years straight. And I always was the author that would sit next to him and like be the moderator So
How fun.
I know. So I got to spend time with him and his wife, and we like would chit chatty and we would talk about things. I have a lot of pictures with him. And so that is so cool. I did not know he wrote the screenplay.
Yeah, he was at least attached to it in some way. Like
Yeah.
he might have been assistant producer or something like that. But he was attached. He was attached.
Wow. He's a cool dude.
That's cool.
He's super cool.
You're going to have to post one of those pictures on our Instagram.
I will. I'll have to look for it because
Perfect.
that was a long time ago. So I read all the books too, like Clari, the originals, like 20 years ago. And so, you know, the thing about reading a book that long ago, for me at least, I don't remember a whole lot of the detail except that I remember the big moments and the feelings and the emotions.
Yeah.
So there was a whole lot of detail that I was like, what? But then I remembered all the feelings and emotions. I also saw the movie, the 80s movie, and the one with Kyle MacLachlan, the guy from, what show was he on?
And it has Sting in it.
Twin Peaks.
And my husband gets very upset with me because I keep saying it's David Bowie.
Sting.
But it's not. It's Sting.
It is Sting. Yeah,
It's
Sting
Sting.
was in it, and it was so weird because he was like he was one of the Harkonnens, and Sting was just like a guy in a loincloth the entire movie. It's like, did anyone see the 80s movie?
I think I saw it ages ago.
It was so weird.
Yeah.
But it was good.
I've heard about
The
it.
whole
Yeah,
story. The whole story is very trippy. And I remember loving the books when I first read them, and just being and just the depth and the world building
too.
and all the language and lots of the ecology stuff. Don't tell my husband, he's an ecologist, but I skipped over a lot of that because it's but just the world building and the story, and it really had the sense that this was a small piece of a much larger story. With there's so many things going on in the world before and after, but I have reread the first book this weekend, and I agree with you, Valia. It's horrible. And
You know what's so
It's
weird?
not-
no,
Okay,
it's not horrible. It still has
horrible.
all the things in it, but it just head hops so much. And I guess
Yeah.
in the 80s or whenever it was written, or the 60s, whenever it was written, that was how people wrote. And reading it again now and knowing some of the craft that I've been working on, it's just, it just, I mean, it
Isn't
has
that
like
weird?
different character thoughts in two different paragraphs. I mean, it is well laid out. You can follow it, but it just jumps from one character to the other character there, and in one scene it will go through every character that's present in the room.
Right,
And-
like there's a lot of that, like there's like no organization to it the way that we're used to seeing it. And for somebody who's never read it before and was coming into it for the first time, I was like, I have to be smart to read this book. Like I'm not understanding. So like it took me a really long time to get through the first chapter, like a really long time. I had to keep going back and rereading it. The only reason I even made it through half of the book is because I was buddy reading it with somebody, and then he ended up not buddy reading it. So I stopped. I was like, fine, because like life got in the way. And so we paused it, and then we just never went back to it.
Isn't that funny? Because when I read it so many years ago, I loved it and I poured through every single book, but I don't think I would love it now.
Yeah.
And so, and I don't even want to go back and read it because I don't want to ruin that
Right.
feeling, that love feeling, like you're in love and then you go back and you see the person you were in love with and you're like, what? So yeah, I don't think I'm going to reread it because I want to keep that feeling.
Well, it's kind of like Lord of the Rings in that way. Like if you try to publish Lord of the Rings now, like it wouldn't get published. It just is too,
Right.
Yeah.
The style has evolved too much. Writing craft has evolved to a different format. So I think it's similar. But I started reading it on audiobook and I couldn't get through the second chapter. And I think it's because I tried coming into it later after I had been writing for a long time. And like there was this villain monologue and I hate that. Like that's not considered good writing today. And so I mean I love the story, but
Yeah.
it's really hard to turn off your writer brain.
Yes.
Like, it's so hard because it's so ingrained in us, and we work so hard at it. Like, we work so hard at our craft that we learn what not to do, what to do, how to react to certain things. And so when you come into a book that is written completely differently than what you take as the goal or whatever, like, it's kind of like, what? It's like, what is happening here?
You have to just go in with a completely different mindset. Like, this is like reading Shakespeare or something, and what went in Shakespeare era doesn't exactly fly in today's era, and you have to just let all that go, and that's so hard to do.
I feel like that would be also really hard to listen to.
I feel like that book would be very hard to listen to.
Yeah, it took me a little bit to realize it was head hopping. Like, oh, okay. And then once I figured that out, I was just able to go, okay, this is kind of like an omniscient narrator or something like that. And so then I could follow it. But it took a little bit.
Yeah. And the other thing is, because I keep reading, you read things about what's the best length of a book for genres. And they keep using Dune as an example of being a really long book that got published anyway. And I kept reading that in place. I'm thinking, it's not that long, is it? I don't remember it being really long. And then when we were getting ready to do this, I looked at the shelf and I go, I guess it's on the longish side. It's not super long. And then I actually picked up my book, and it's got like the tiniest margins, and it's got like really tiny print. I'm like, okay, maybe this is a long book.
Okay, but it wasn't published as one book. It was published in 2 parts.
Oh, it was.
Was it?
What?
Yeah.
I don't think so.
Originally it was not one book. It was published in 2 different parts. And then it was put as the Dune that we know as the complete story.
Ooh.
That is a new thing. So
No way.
originally...
What did I read? What did I read then?
Well, if you read all of it, then you read both parts.
But was it one book?
technically-
Was the first book one book, or was it in 2 pieces now? I'm very confused.
Okay, so if you have watched the new movie...
Yeah.
That is basically the first part that was published.
Okay.
Like, that's how it was published by itself. And then the second part was published after. And I don't know how much time passed between the two, because I know this because when I was like, oh, I want to read Dune because I want to be like the cool kids, I looked into it and they were like, oh, get a bind up of Dune. And I'm like, a bind up of Dune? What? And it was like the newly published book that is Dune, but it was actually a bind up because it's the 2 parts together.
I was wondering how he picked that spot to end the movie.
Okay, where does it end?
Well,
Where does it end?
I'm not sure. It ends when when him and Jessica go with the Freeman. Yeah. When they're in the desert. So I'm not sure if that is exactly the spot, because obviously I only read like half the book, so I have no idea if that's exactly the spot. But it felt like that was the spot where the first part would have ended.
Yeah.
Well,
definitely it's a good place for it to stop, because that's where he goes into his new role. He's the son, a Atreides son, and then it stops when he goes into the new realm of being with the Fremen. So
yeah. Well, let's talk about the movie.
Yes.
Then. This is a perfect segue into the movie.
Yes, please. Yes, please. Yes, please.
What do we want to say first?
I'll go first. I'll go first because you guys are like naysayers. I really enjoyed it. So my background is I didn't know much about the world at all because I tried reading the book, couldn't get into it. I knew it was like an epic sci-fi, and I love epic sci-fi. And so I don't know. I just really enjoyed it. I loved the cinematography. I loved the music. Like, I'm a huge fan of Hans Zimmer. And so
Me too!
I know.
Yes!
I have all this stuff.
Yeah.
Oh my
so,
God.
like, listening into it in the theater in this huge, like, sound of boom and stuff behind you. Oh my gosh, it was so epic. And then just the way how they visualized it was so much cavernous and empty space, and like you just felt the immensity and the heaviness of this world, and I loved that. And I love that it was a huge epic sci-fi that wasn't Star Wars. Like, it was different in tone, it had completely different feeling, Okay, Valley doesn't agree with me, but I liked it because I just think there needs to be more sci-fi out there, and especially like big sci-fi. And so I had fun. I liked it, and so I want part 2 to be out already, and I really hope they make it.
Okay, let me just say, I loved everything that you loved about it. I loved all of that too.
Okay, yes.
That's not my problem. Okay, I love the visuals. I love the music. I love the feeling. That, to me, was the best part of the movie. Here's the problem I had. Do we want to talk about the problem now?
Yes.
I mean, sure. I have a whole list. So yeah, you can start us off.
So we were home. I didn't have that huge experience like you, but I had to stop for a moment and look at Olivia and Wade and say, does this seem choppy to y'all? I felt like the movie was extremely choppy. So it would have like this really like serious conversation with the mom, and then like cut, and then and then it would go to the dad walking down the hall talking to somebody else, cut, and then it would go to like outside and they're in the sand, cut. I felt like the whole thing was just like a scene and then a cut and then a scene and then cut, and it just wasn't fluid to me. That's only one of my issues. Did you notice that?
I did notice that, but I actually think that was kind of on purpose because of the way the book was written.
I guess.
I think, but you haven't read it in the last 20 years. So I think that actually mirrored the way the book works.
Yeah.
So that, okay, I have to say, I had a lot of problem with the pacing of this movie. And, okay, let me just, before I tell you all the bad things. No, the cinematography was absolutely beautiful. I do agree with that. I think they did a really beautiful way, like the way they did their shots, the way they created like the world, and they brought this world really into the screen in a really beautiful way.
Yes.
But I think the movie, and I told my dad this, my dad and I watched it together, and he was coming into it, he's a huge sci-fi fan. He watches everything sci-fi, but he has never seen or read the books. Like he was coming in as a completely new person. And I turned to him about 20 minutes into the movie and I was like, Dad, this movie's pacing is like a documentary. It's like we're seeing things happening in real time. And I was having a really like hard time with that because I'm like, when I see sci-fi or like when I watch sci-fi, I want a different experience than when I'm reading the book, because when I'm reading a book, it's okay if it takes 50 million pages to get to stuff because I'm getting that experience of every description, of every thought, of everything. But in the movie, you only have a visual, like, okay, so that beginning scene, or it's not a beginning scene, but in the beginning, there's a scene when they come to the planet and they like give the dad the reign over the other planet for them to move. That whole procession, it took like 5 minutes. It could have been a minute long. Like, I'm like, why are we watching this happen in real time? Like, I don't understand.
Because it was beautiful.
I guess, but I was like, oh my gosh, can we get to the next scene? And I think that was the problem with the whole movie for me, because the dialogue was really quiet and there were scenes where it was really, really dark, and like unless you watch it in a movie theater, you wouldn't be able to see what's happening on the screen. And so when those things work together, like they made the movie very difficult to be like fully immersed into. And I think, Abby, if I went to the movie theater and watched it there, I would have been more immersed.
Yeah, I'm wondering because I kind of thought, I didn't mind the pacing because to me it just came across as part of the tone of the story. Mm-hmm. And like, it's definitely a sci-fi that you have to participate in. Like, you can't just flip through the pages and get like, you have to think and you have to work for it. But I wasn't expecting to not work for it. Like, I knew it would be epic. I knew it would be heavy. So I didn't mind sitting there and watching the 5-minute procession because I knew it was part of the deep world building. And so
Yeah, I can understand that. And also, you're a more sci-fi person than I am. Like, I watch the fast sci-fi stuff, and you're like more into just all the nitty-gritty
Yeah,
of it. So I can
like both
Because it was
understand that.
hardcore. Yeah, it was
Yeah,
hardcore
Yeah.
sci-fi.
Yeah, it definitely leans
Yeah.
hard sci-fi for sure.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, so I was making a list while I was watching it. I'm just gonna go through it really fast, and then you can guys
I'm
can
going to
discuss.
stop you, I'm sure, because I'm going to probably add on. Okay, go.
Oh, you're fine. So I already mentioned the pacing and the dialogue, right? Okay, I did really love the dragonfly ships. I don't know why.
Yes, those were so cool.
I was so obsessed with
Those
them.
were
I was
amazing.
like, this is so
Those
awesome.
wings and the sound. Oh my gosh.
And then there was that shot when they're flying over the dunes for the first time, like to go see whatever that ship was that picking up spice. When they were flying over, it reminded me of what those overhead shots for like World War movies where the planes fly over, but it
Oh,
was like these
yeah.
little tiny dragonflies. And I don't know why, but I was like, oh my gosh, that's so pretty. Like I was just like obsessed with them. And then they're like little diving thing that they would like fold their wings and
Yeah,
then
that
dive
was so
down.
cool.
Like, yeah, and I really like that. And I think that is the part that I really loved about the movie that they brought in, because I know that Dune is like, when you were talking about Star Wars, I know that Dune and Star Wars are often like on the same page, like they kind of are side by side in a table or something, you know what I mean? Like that people compare the two. And one of the things that I like about Dune is how little technology it is, versus the Star Wars where everything is technology, right? Like there's a reason why there's no computer screens in Dune at all, right? And so I really like that they still had technology, obviously, because they had like the flying ships and all that stuff, but it wasn't like that AI screens thing. It was more like gadgets and inventions versus the actual, the only really like technological thing, quote unquote, were the shields that they wore.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
But other than that, like even in that, you have to have a close combat because you can't penetrate those with guns, right?
Mm-hmm.
You have to have a slow blade to go through it or whatever. And so I really like that. I felt like that part really like separated the world from the sci-fi world that we're used to, because we're used to the screens and we're used to the holograms and we're used to all that stuff. But like Timmy literally, okay, Paul, I keep calling him Timmy, but Paul in the movie, like he uses a projector to like study, and I'm just like, I love that about a sci-fi world where they had to go back into like before, because, and I know like the premise of it, and for those of you who don't know, the premise of it is that there was like an AI war and like thousands of years ago, and so they had to kind of like destroy all AI and then go back to like the more natural regular way of life, which is why like one of the guys always carries a book with them. Like it's like that kind of stuff, and it's more like psychologically like, or powery I don't know how to say that, I don't know what I'm trying to say, but like their space travel is not warp speed, it's like bending time
engines.
and space.
Yeah,
like,
it's engines.
Yeah, which I don't know, I love that about it. So that was something that I really loved.
I like that too, because it also kind of gave it this feeling like it could actually be real. You know what I mean? Like if you could think of the invention of, the cell phone and how far it's advanced in our timeline. And now we have AR and, what's going to be the next thing? Are we all going to have these little shields that we can put? Right. Are we going to have these little buttons behind our ear that we can click and talk to somebody?
Well, I think it's interesting, just Valia, that you were pointing that out. Like it's almost as though it's stepping back into time with its technology. Is that a lot of hard sci-fi that's being published nowadays has that in it. So it leans really heavily on like Latin influence, Roman influence, a feudal system, kind of like how Herbert's Dune was set up, like because you have the emperor and then the fiefdom of Arrakis, and so there's definitely that hierarchy there that's kind of medieval. But a lot of sci-fi right now that's being published has that. Think of like Red Rising, Pierce Brown's Red Rising. It's very like Roman based. Yeah. Empire of Silence by Christopher, okay, I'm going to butcher his last name, like Ruccio, I think. That's also very like Roman Empire-esque. And so there's kind of a trend right now for that stepping back. Like you might have some technology like fancy shields or fancy weapons, but for the most part it's like hands-on battle, not like just shooting guns from far away. But that's all the epic stuff. But the more like fantasy sci-fi like Star Wars, that's the more like AI stuff and lightsabers and like bang 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 bang, action packed, like humor, that sort of thing.
Yeah,
that is
I think
interesting.
I like that. Yeah.
So it's like fantasy sci-fi versus sci-fi.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, which I think is really interesting, because I think that's probably why Dune in general is getting mixed reviews right now. It's because we're used to the epicness of the fast fantasy sci-fi. Like that's what has been in the media. That's what we like go and watch and stuff like that. So bringing up something that is way more, I don't know, it did kind of remind me of The Mandalorian, how like the pacing is a lot slower and you spend more time with the characters and it's a lot more, like that's what it reminded me of. And I'm like, okay, yeah, I can see that. Like that's the difference between like the regular Star Wars and like Mandalorian, the show, even like Rogue One, for example. Like there's a difference in those creations versus the Star Wars that we know as, you know, the big whatever saga and stuff like that. Also, I was cracking up though, because they for sure used like the Mandalorian horn beep thing a couple of times in the movie, and I was just like,
Did they?
Yes, I recorded it at one point. I have to see if I kept it because I did it to my dad, and I was just like, Dad, does that sound like a Mandalorian? And he's like, yes, it does. I'm like, okay.
That is so
I thought it was
funny.
just me.
You know what else it reminded me of? Okay, go with me for a second because it's going to be weird.
Okay.
But it reminded me of The Hunger Games. Okay, and here's why. Because like the movie The Hunger Games, because when you watch it, Jennifer Lawrence doesn't have very many lines. All of it is portrayed through silence and through looks and through like you can tell they're having eternal thoughts, but they're not speaking it. And I feel like Chalamet, is that how you pronounce it? Chalamet. Like his Paul Atreides, like also has a similar thing. He doesn't actually say a ton in the movie. It's all like silence and thinking and weighted looks, which is so different from, again, fast-paced sci-fi fantasy Star Wars. Like everything's out in the open. It's not as silent. Like it doesn't rely much on that.
Yeah, which that was my next point on there. It's like Timmy has that stoic look down pat. He's pretty to look at though too. like he really had that like you said, like he was just like portraying, like you could see him thinking and you can see all that stuff, but he just like stood there, you know?
Yeah. It made me wonder how much of the book itself, again, since I didn't actually finish it, how much of it is internal monologue. And like,
a lot.
Exactly. A lot. And so, I mean, you can't have voiceovers because that's something the 80s movie did, right? Like they had voiceover. Yeah, like you can't do that anymore. It doesn't work. And so how else do you portray that? You have to like see them thinking. You can't, I don't know, maybe that's just the medium.
No, I do agree with that. And I also like, this was another part that I did like. I loved Duncan and Paul's relationship.
Yes.
Like, because it was such a contrast to how we see him with everybody else in the movie. Because like everybody else in the movie, he's like
reserved.
He's the son and he's like the whatever. But then when it was with Duncan, like it was like full on hugging and like joking and smiling the whole time. And you just see like the contrast of like, or you can see his like the different characteristics to him, you know, to Paul. And I thought they did a really good job with that it was shown in like the purest way. It wasn't like shoved down our throats like, oh, he's not actually just stoic. Like he's, you know, he has other emotions. But no, it was like a genuine reaction when he saw Duncan or whatever. You know what I mean? Like, yes. I really like that between them.
I love that too. But I actually felt like the character relationships could have used a whole lot more. I felt like it didn't have enough of the connection with Paul and his mother and then Paul and his father. I felt like there wasn't enough of that. And I thought that Duncan was super cool. I wanted more. I wanted more of him. I wanted more of him with Duncan. I also wanted a lot more with the doctor. because I knew what was going to happen with the doctor, right? Because I had read the book and I saw the 80s. And so I knew that he was the big traitor. And when it happened in the movie, it was like, oh, it was the doctor. Like, it didn't exactly like punch me in the gut because he only had like maybe 2 scenes, the doctor.
Yeah, that's a good point. I didn't think of that until now, but
I was like, what? That's it? Because I knew it was coming.
He isn't in the book very much, though, having just read it. And in the book, it's not a surprise. It's
really?
rereading it now, there's like a comment very early on about how Dr. Yue is the betrayer. No, they didn't know, but because it's an omniscient narrator, he was introduced as that.
Well, right, but the mother and Paul kind of like would talk. I remember this, and maybe I'm wrong, Claire. You have to tell me. There would be scenes, and they would go, "Oh, the doctor is acting strange," or the mother would think, "Oh, his lip is quivering," or whatever. And so it kind of was giving all these little hints, I thought, in the book, because you didn't want it to happen, but then when it happened, you were just like, "Oh my gosh!" And so the book made it, to me, like a punch in the gut, whereas the movie, it was like, okay, bummer. I mean, I just wanted that punch in the gut, and I didn't get it.
No, that's understandable too, I think. But I think a big part of it was because there just wasn't. I don't know. I feel like the way the movie was filmed, it was Paul's story.
Yeah.
So like it wasn't really the way the book is. The book dives into everything. Like you literally go to the other scenes. They show the other scenes with, like them going to the planet to get all the army people or whatever. Like you see those scenes, but they were just like, oh, this is what's happening. But in the book, like you actually dive into them and all this stuff. So like in the book, you have all those thoughts from other people, but I feel like the movie was very much like, here's our main character. It's all about what's going on with him. And so if they spent that time with like with everybody else, I don't think it would have been the same. I think it's just the way, like, that's what an adaptation is. Like you have to pick a main character to focus on. I did have a really hard time with Jessica though. Like,
really?
Yes.
Okay, the reason, because I don't remember her crying so much in the book. Like, she was portrayed as this, like, hardcore, like, woman, and then in the movie, she was a crying mess for, like, most of it until the very end, where I was like, oh, okay, there she is. When she, takes the fight, does the fight thing, and is in the desert, I was like, okay, yeah, that's more of what when I read, like, that's more of the character that I got. But in the movie, she, like, cried for most of it. I was like, what?
I agree with you, because when Paul was in the room being tested with the box, she was on the other side of the door having this, like, breakdown.
See, that's the only time I remember her crying.
No. Yeah, me too. But after that, she's not. She's like, she goes back to being like, okay, like, this is, let me teach you this. Let's go over this. Let's do this. Like, she's like that moving forward character, and the only time she does have a breakdown is when he's being tested, because it's like this whole thing, because she literally thought he was gonna die, right?
Yeah.
So like I get that, but for the rest of the movie, I was like, why is she crying? Like every 5 seconds, every time you show her, she's crying.
She does like, mourn her husband when Leto dies. She does, although it's more meant to be, as is from the book, it's more meant to be sort of off screen, and it's not in public.
Oh no, that was off screen. Yeah, they didn't show her mourn him. Like they showed her kind of, I think, realizing he was dead when she like feels it in the tent with Paul. But after that, they like hug, and like it's not mentioned again.
Yes.
That was the time I would expect her to be mourning.
I wanted her to mourn also. She did not mourn enough for him. But that also, I think it's because they didn't really establish enough of their love for each other. That was another issue that I had with the movie. They didn't really, and I know it's Paul's story, but still, they should have had more of that relationship with the mother and the father, and they really didn't. I didn't see it.
I
Oh,
don't know. I don't think there was time for it, really.
I got that sense that they really cared for each other and that they're good people. And even though she was his concubine, like there was still a genuine relationship there. Like I got that from the movie.
He does make that comment where he's like, I should have married you when they're in the bedroom, and I was like, I like that they put that in, because I don't think people coming to the movie without having any knowledge about Dune, I don't think they would have known that they weren't married.
I didn't,
because I don't think they mentioned. Yeah, they don't mention it at all. And then when he says that, I was like, okay, good. Like I'm glad they put that in, but also it kind of makes it seem like he really does love her. You know what I mean? And I did like that part.
It is a very sexist story. Is that addressed or tried to be? I guess it's more in the second half and things maybe, but that more comes out. But is there any adaptation to make it more equal rights, or is it still?
I read an
misogynistic?
article. Yeah, I read an article where they interviewed I think is Villeneuve. Is that how you pronounce the director's name?
Yes.
Villeneuve. And he talked about how they gender flipped not the ecologist, but like the main scientist person that they come to the planet, and she's the one that kind of takes them around and describes to them what the spice is and like all the operations and stuff. In the book, she was a white man, but in the movie, she's a black woman. And so they did do that just to bring in some more women. And I know Rebecca Ferguson, the gal who plays Lady Jessica, I know, I was reading another interview by her, just how she said she didn't initially want the role because at first she was afraid she was going to get typecasted as like another stoic weeping woman or whatever. And then when she actually realized that, oh, Lady Jessica is actually kind of a badass, like she took on the role because she didn't. Okay, Valia doesn't agree with me because she thought she was crying every 5 minutes, but I didn't see that. So,
well, my dad mentioned it too. He was like, "Okay, like is that her only personality trait?" I was like, "Apparently, in this adaptation, it is." Because I was trying to tell him, but I also think my biggest thing with this movie, okay. My biggest thing.
We get to it. Okay.
Oh gosh, I'm so scared. What is it?
No, it's not. It's that it's part one. Nothing happened. Like, I mean, stuff happened, but it's 2.5 hours of setup for part two, where all the epic stuff happened,
which hasn't even been greenlit, and we don't know if we're even going to get it.
Yeah, we don't even know if we're going to get it, which I think it is, because they're making bank. Even with it being released on HBO Max, it's still making bank in the US. So I think they are going to make a second movie. But I think that was my biggest problem, is that for people who are used to, going back to that, for people who are used to the fast-paced, exciting fantasy sci-fi, they're going to be like, what? Okay,
yeah,
cool.
I do
like,
agree.
You know?
I do agree.
Yeah, and so I think maybe some of it's, I think it would have been better to maybe cut the story in a different way, where you kind of had a little bit more of the exciting parts in this movie and cut some of those longer scenes in the beginning that didn't really do anything but give us beautiful cinematography and world building. Like, just, you know what I mean?
The procession.
Like, if they cut it... Yeah, the procession, please cut that. No, I'm just kidding. No, but if they did that, they used that 2.5 hours and cut it a little bit differently, I think it would have worked more in the broader sense versus being tailored more to the people who are fans of the story already.
I wish they would have done, like you said, cut it differently, but I would have rather had an even longer movie, like something like Lord of the Rings extended, like ridiculously long movie, and get that full arc. And then you can keep the cinematography, you can get that different tone, like the slower pacing of it. But I think people would have been more satisfied because you got some of the epic stuff and you got the full build up. So I kind of wish they just put it into one massive one.
Yeah, which I thought in the
That's a
when
good point.
originally, yeah, I agree with you. I thought it was just going to be one movie.
Yeah, me too.
I thought so
that was
too.
what I thought. So when we started watching it and they say Dune Part 1, I was like, oh crap. And my dad was like, what? And I'm like, I'm pretty sure they split the story where like maybe where it originally split or whatever. And so my dad was like, oh, okay, because like he didn't know, right? And then when we started watching it, I was like, oh yeah, this is like Catching Fire Part 1 where nothing happens.
Or The Hobbit.
Yeah, basically.
Man.
I watched the 2000 miniseries, which is 3 1.5 hour episodes. So it is that bit longer.
Yeah. Did you think that format was better?
I don't know. It looked so old. And all the effects just look so dated now. And it's funny because you watch Star Wars or something, and that seems to have held up a lot better than this one did. It was so old, and lots of the acting seemed very wooden, and the dialogue was quite stilted. And yeah, and it was fun, and you know it showed you the world, but I'm not going to be in a rush to watch it again, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I can't see myself rewatching Dune Part 1. Like, I mean, I think that it's one and done, but then if the second movie does come out, then maybe I will speed watch Part 1.
Well, guess what? I'm going to go see it again because I'm going to see it in the movie theater.
Yeah, you have to. I think it changes the experience.
Yes.
It does, actually. I did see an article. I think the director was talking about it. He's like, if you watch it at home, it's like putting a turtle in a box or something like that. Like he made like a weird
turtle
analogy with it. I don't know why that's the first thing that came to my mind, but he made like a comment like you're missing out on the experience. And I was like, I think that's part of it too, because for example, there was a part in the movie where it's like closer at the end where they're in the desert, right? And they're traveling across desert and trying to get away from like the worms. And they get to the rock, and then Paul stands and actually like stares down one of the worms coming out of the ground. You couldn't see that at all. Like
it was hard to see.
You could kind of see
it was
the
very
outline.
hard to see.
Yeah, and I was just like,
why
oh
did
my
they
gosh.
do that? Don't they know that people watch films at home as well? That just seems...
No, but I know, but I think the director was like, you need to go to the movie theater. You need to go to the movie theater. And
that came across so
why.
different in the movie theater. You're just like, whoa. Like, that's crazy.
Yeah, it didn't.
Yeah.
My dad and I are like, should I get up and move the TV a little bit? Like, can we find a way that we can see this? So I think that's partly why, like, some of those scenes were just, I did not appreciate. I'm like, come on, dude. And I wonder if when it comes out on DVD, if they just will cut the color differently a little bit, which is possible. But I doubt it.
Maybe, kind of like Game of Thrones. Remember at the very end of Game of Thrones, it was so dark you could not see what was happening.
Yeah, you couldn't see the epic battle.
The epic battle was like you could. It was so dark you couldn't see anything. It was so awful.
Yeah, I did not watch that show.
I just realized I got my maths wrong because 3 1.5 hour episodes is less than 2.5 hour films. Just to correct myself from earlier, but yeah.
We don't know if it's going to be anything on the other end.
That's true.
Anyway, I think it's just such an interesting experience because I think it's so different, than what we're used to seeing in like the media, whatever. But I loved Timmy as Paul. I thought he was like perfect for it. And that was my favorite part.
Yes, I actually didn't think I was going to like him in that role because he's such a like beautiful boy, and for some reason I just wanted Paul to be a little bit more rugged. I don't know why. But I just didn't know if he could do it. And wow, he did it. He was great.
Yeah. I also really loved really fast. I really loved people's responses because they spent so much time with Zendaya and him like promoting the film.
Yes! That was my problem.
Oh, well, but you didn't finish the books. But I was like, but I knew that she like doesn't show up until like part 2. Really?
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
And who does she play?
Chani.
Okay.
Chari. Yeah, she plays her, and it's really funny because I knew going into it that she doesn't show up at all, like until the second part of the book, really, because I didn't get any like of their relationship at all, really, when I read the book. And I had to like look up. I mean, I looked up to see how it finished, obviously, the book, because I knew I wasn't going to finish reading it. But so when they did the promotion stuff for it, I was just like, these people are going to be so disappointed.
I didn't realize it was a part 1, part 2 until we pushed play and it said, part 1. And I also didn't realize, where it was going to stop. And when that was it, and she was in like one scene other than the little
dreamy bits.
The dream sequences. I was like, man, that's terrible. I wanted more.
Yeah. Yeah, that's everybody's response to it. Especially because they spent, all the promo stuff, it's been the two of them doing interviews together and whatever and stuff like that. And which I love, but it's just hilarious how, little she was.
But I thought she was great. I felt like she was good. Like the feeling of her being Chani. Is it Chani?
Yeah, I think so.
Chani, right?
The feeling of her being Chani was great. Like, I thought she was wonderful in the small scene at the end. But I also thought at the end, when they had her, I thought she was going to say, "Oh, I know you," or something, because everyone else, like every other, like, Fremen that he was in touch with was kind of like, "I've seen you," or "I recognize you." So I thought she was going to say something similar, and she didn't.
I was trying to think. I was like, I think they talk about him being the chosen one, right? They talk about him, and she's there for it. So I don't think it was necessary for her to be like, "Oh, I know who you are too," because everybody in that place did when they come upon them at the end of the movie.
Yeah.
All of those people know who he is, especially because that guy was there who met him before too. And when they were like, when the other dude calls them out and stuff like that, like, "Oh yeah, you're not," or whatever. I don't think it was just necessary for them to be like, "Oh, I know you." So clearly everybody here does.
But it's like the romance, I wanted that little.
This is not, Dune is not a romance.
The meet cute.
I wanted that hint of connection between them. I wanted her to like give him a look or tilt her head or something. I don't know.
She gave him a knife. Come on now.
Yeah,
True.
here, good luck. He's gonna kill you.
It's a love
quick.
knife.
Yeah.
Yeah. He's like, "Here you go, die with honor," and then he lives, and she's like, "Oh crap."
Yeah, she's like, "Give me that knife back."
Yeah, can I get that back?
No. Anyway, yeah, that's all I had to say about it. Oh, except one thing. The whole movie, I was like, when they get to the planet, I'm like, did they film this in Arizona? 'Cause our palm trees are also on fire during summer.
So it's a little bit
Anyway.
familiar.
Yeah, I was like, I understand this. Can we get some of those suits that recycle the sweat into water?
Yeah, your spit is sacred.
Yeah. It was great. Anyway, I thought that was fun.
Yeah. I'm excited to see it in the movie theater. We're going for sure.
Do it. Yeah, you absolutely have to.
Yeah, we are.
I also love that Abby loved it. Thank you, Abby,
You're
for being
welcome.
here as our balancing act.
You're welcome. I also read more sci-fi than you guys, so
Yes, yeah, definitely. Which I think it just puts you in a different perspective over everything, which I think is why this kind of conversations are so fun to me, is because just like with books, like somebody might love a book that I hate or vice versa, because we all just have opinions. And so coming into it from like all the different directions, I think it's just really fun, because then you're like, "Oh yeah, that is true." And then be like, "Oh wait, yeah, that is true also," So yeah, thanks ladies for being here.
Yeah, I want to go watch it. I just have one more thing I want to say about Dune. And this is my Wikipedia research, about there was plans in the 70s to create a film version of it. And they cast Salvador Dali as the emperor. Wouldn't that have been cool? Having Dali, the painter, as the emperor.
Oh,
I'm like, who is that? Who is that?
You guys don't know who that is?
No.
Okay, this
He's,
is worse than me not knowing baseball, guys.
Okay, I'm
He's
looking it up.
an incredibly famous Spanish painter.
Holy cannoli.
Well, I probably know his work then. I don't know names.
What's his
Anyway.
last name? What's his
Dali.
last name?
Dali.
Yeah.
Oh, there it is. The first name that came up on my Google search.
Yeah.
Yep, he's like
so he-
famous.
Oh, I know him. I just did not know his name. Okay.
Anyway,
he
he was going to be the emperor, and once he'd agreed to do the film, he then renegotiated to be paid $100,000 an hour. Bear in mind,
Nice.
Wow.
this is in the 1970s, and
Wow.
the emperor apparently agreed, and then adjusted his part so it only took 1 hour to film.
Oh, that's funny.
Be careful what you wish for.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, I thought that was really funny, so I thought I would share that with you.
That
all.
is funny.
Yeah, that's really cool. I know. Now everybody go and do more research about all the background stuff for Dune.
Oh, I
Yes.
did. I fell down a
I
huge
know.
rabbit hole, like hours.
I love it. I could see you doing that.
Oh, yeah.
Which I love. Yeah.
I'm such like a
That's great.
wiki rabbit hole. I'm probably the only person who actually donates to the Wikimedia like charitable contributions.
yeah.
Like I feel like I'm like all of it.
It's just
That
you.
is
yeah,
awesome.
it's just me holding them up.
Thanks, Abby.
I got
They
Gotcha.
need you and they love you.
Oh my gosh, that's awesome. Yeah, so if you guys have seen this movie or read the book or have any opinions, if you agree or disagree, especially with me, who is the little naysayer over here, tell me. I want to hear it. We want to hear it. We want to know your thoughts. Go to our Instagram at Reading Queens Pod and tell us all about your Dune experience. But yeah, this was really fun. Before you go, please give us a follow on our favorite podcast platform and leave us a star rating or a review. Either of those help. Both would be much appreciated. And then tell your friends. And yeah, we'll be back next week with more exciting stuff. So be here. And we'll talk to you then.
Woohoo!
Bye.
Bye.